All right. So back to Vietnam. Not sure I'm thrilled about it. And this is also a time when I hunt down pesky ops complete markers that snuck their way, that stayed hidden on the board. So something was pointed out on my last video that led me to realize, wow, I don't really have like strategic goals like you would expect someone to have. I gotta say, I'm playing it more like a coin game in some ways, in the sense of, hey, it's counterinsurgency, right? It should be. In the sense that what I'm looking at is, where can I kill some units? Where is the VC congregating? And within that, do I care if they're there? If body count is my only goal, then I don't mind going into VC controlled areas, throw the free fire in and just try to kill what I can. And if I'm in non-VC controlled areas, I kind of try to stay away from leaving the free fire in place. But there are some things that probably require more effort than I'm willing to put in operating just on an opportunistic basis of like, oh yeah, I can make some attacks there, I can make some attacks there. Part of the problem is the opportunism is pretty important and valuable. So yeah, the first cav can hit all over the place. But for me to do something outside of the immediate range of the 27th Marines, I have to air mobilize it, or I have to, which is expensive, it's a big unit, or I have to basically say, okay, I'm going to strategic move it to another area of the board, which means if it's got anything to do where it is, and there's almost always something to do with units. There were some places where, yeah, I had cleared out the enemy, but like if I leave, you're going to see shit like this show up, you know, where I've got kind of holes that are harder to get to. And well, now I've got a problem there, and I'm not in position to deal with that problem, which is kind of the difficulty with like trying to put more troops somewhere. I just don't have enough troops to cover the whole map, you know, and that's as it should be, especially in the bad areas of the board. But that's something that I feel a real deficit with, and without that, yeah, I'm basically doing an opportunistic evaluation function over all of the spaces on the map, you know, all of the potential targets that there are. And I can cut that into pieces and say, okay, well, what's going on here? Is there anything I really want to move on here? Is this important? Let's put this in hold, you know. Not quite sure that I have to put that, actually not sure that I want that on hold either. I have a real problem with putting things into hold or patrol mode, because that means I will not be able to use it for anything else. And if it's something like this situation, well, the CA unit I'm probably not going to use for anything else. I could probably throw that in hold, but that armored unit, but it doesn't really need it. And I might want to use that in conjunction with that headquarters if something is happening. And for the armored unit, I might want to move that to another location and defend a different location. So that's kind of the issue there. But yeah, I'm constantly, you know, evaluating the entire board for what do I want to do next. And you know, my attraction leads to certain pockets where it looks like it's likely I'll be able to do something, but that's about it. That's about the extent of it. I have to get 4th Corps back under control. I think that's going to be a major focus because there's way too much VC down there. And one of the few things that I had going right was I had cleared most of Fourth Corps. Well, now it's a mess again after the invasion. An ugly attritional operation here in Fuyan. I mean, it wasn't intended to be. I was hoping to wipe out an NVA stack. I didn't send quite enough in, I don't think. It felt okay. I mean, I ended up committing all of the first cav and all of the ARVN 25th to this. I free-fired Fuban and Fuyan, but the problem is things moved into Kontum through Bin Din, and casualty trade-offs ended up being, you know, better, not 1-to-1, maybe not quite as good as 2-to-1, but almost all against VC in the end, because I just, there was, instead of a VC battalion there was a regiment, and that allowed them to absorb almost all the losses on that. So I was trading US losses for VC, which is just not a good deal. I don't like doing that. A lot of stuff got brought into it, but we basically just chased units further back up to Kontum, and, you know, it wasn't really that painful for the NLF, which I still don't quite have a handle on what to do with those big units, especially in ugly terrain. I mean, it's like, man, the big pursuit bonus, great, but wow. Yeah. Away for a while makes me too deliberative, I think. But an operation like this last one, chasing this thing up here with the first cav, it has a psychological component. Everything in every game does, and this game has a lot of them, but this is one I really wanted to point out because what happened was the US wasn't getting terrible results, but they weren't getting great results. They were maybe getting results they did not want, maybe didn't want to continue with. But even so, there was kind of a, I've expended so much. I threw the entire first cav in. I threw a couple of other resources into play in this. I did some free fires. I'm getting good enough results that I can't just give it up. Even though I'm taking casualties beyond that. I'm taking additional costs on with every round of the combat that happens. It wasn't completely obvious that I wasn't getting the better end of the attack, and the fact that I had invested so much in the attack meant that it was much, much harder to pull out of it. And that's the kind of thing you see in some battle situations where, you know, it's really hard, even, you know, for maybe even harder for an organization to turn around and say, yeah, that's a mistake, let's stop that now. Rather than a particular person. Like, as the player, I probably have a little bit more capability to say, yeah, no, I'm doing that. I should not be doing that. Seeing the US run into more and more painful things. Up here, units slipping away, but also the VC being more willing to stand and fight, and we can see the effects on my replacement points there. 1st Marine beginning to operate, pushing its way into here. I dissolved a couple of units. You see, I'm still, you know, generating some body bag, not like I was last turn, because I haven't yet figured out how I'm going to get to these big stacks. I did chase the one big stack, but that was all VC replacement points. So the NVA units are maintaining their replacements, which is absolutely key because I need that big number to launch the next offensive. And that may be happening in the winter, for all I know, or I may hold off until spring when there's an advantage because the US doesn't have the air power. I can build up a little bit more towards it. Maybe launch it more in the north. We'll see. I just don't know yet. But yeah, I've got some kind of goal towards getting rid of this stronghold in Tuyen Duke, but I got to clear this shit up too. So this is more of a, let's position ourselves maybe for next turn, or for the next turn in the season to hit there. And I still have this huge problem that occurred in 4th Corps that, again, with Arvin no longer effective, and the U.S. mainly pulled out of there to deal with problems elsewhere because the VC weren't operating down there, I need another division or two, I feel. At the same time, I need the replacements to support it. I think I have enough assets to support it, I just don't have the replacement capability. I'm getting to the end of the line with this in terms of my tolerance for continuing to play. But because of that, I'm trying out some new stuff. In particular, I'm not bothering to count now, which I know is going to just doom me. In this game, you have to get your odds ratios and everything. But I had a decent pursuit going against this VC unit, and it jumped on top of a big stack. And I just said, you know what? I'm going to throw all the firepower I can at it and as much additional units as I can get into play against it. Largely. I mean, I could give other units riverine capability or something and get them into range, but I'm pretty much just throwing whatever I can get there. A couple of air mobilized artillery, but for the most part, just let's see what damage I can do. And like I said, I'm kind of at the point where I'm just facing too much calculation to cope with in the game. And you could say, the same thing would probably come if I was playing one of the really big OCS games too or something. There's just a limit to what I can take. Ended up with a fire about what I expected. I'm getting a 1-to-1 attack here. I've got 60 total US strength points versus 45 total NLF. Firepower, I got some 30 of the US's firepower, whereas 18 of the NVA is. I think I'm at +4 on my modifier. It's really hard to remember all the crap you have to remember. And that gets me a -1 for the terrain. So I'm only a +3. And yeah, I'm actually writing the numbers down now, which helps a little bit, but I haven't really been in the mood to do that. So +3, I get a damn good roll. I'm back up to 9. There's no air power involved in this. And so now I look, 45 plus 30 is 75. I'm going to be doing 9 hits on the NLF. And on their side, I'm sorry, that's wrong. Oh shit, 45 minus, take 18 off that 75. 20 off would be 55. So I am indeed doing 9 hits to them, which I'll mark somehow with one of these. You got to juggle so many fucking numbers, and I'm in pain, and I don't want to do it. Okay, so for the US, I've got 30 hits plus 18 is 48, which says, let's get another die for that. So they're taking 2. Those can all be Arvin replacements. I don't like where that number is going. But yeah, now I have to, and that good roll made a big difference. Now I have to allocate 9 hits on this. It's probably going to be all against the VC. And I think what we're going to end up seeing is the 7th Division throwing itself in, the 1st Marine maybe even getting involved in it with another invasion of Cambodia. Here's the problem. Did I invade Cambodia this turn? Damn, I can't remember. It would really be helpful, to have a few markers for shit like that. And I could do it, but then I got to try to remember which things are immobilized and which aren't. The 7th edition thrown in there, and I got to roll a die and half it for another big 3. Negative politics, but I'm going to mark that Cambodia is invaded by Arvin. Just to remember, the probably be on the board in there. Now I've got 2-to-1 odds, and I've still got the big +4 because nothing moved more than, as a matter of fact, I've got a +5 now because nothing moved more than 1. I didn't bring my Rangers in this time. So everything had a +1 modifier. Artillery and everything that was air mobilized, I think, went. This thing can move. I probably want to get it out of there. 1, 2, and that's as far as it can go without losing its efficacy. But I'm really worried about that getting destroyed. Big, heavy NVA artillery. So yeah, now I'm at +1, +2 because I've got 2-to-1 odds as I increased the amount of units there. And I think that full +5, so now I'm at like +7, make it +6 for the swamp. And the willingness to invade Cambodia probably means that NVA division is toast. That puts me on the 9 again, still not losing any assets, and we're going to see even bigger losses. And I think that thing's just going to start vaporizing because I don't think I can keep it alive. My ARVN replacement's gone now. I brought in some U.S. forces. I'm probably not going to be able to stay here for very long unless I want to continue and invade into Cambodia with the U.S. as well. Which, this is one reason why you don't do the die roll right at the time, because you figure out which invasion you've done and roll it afterwards. Bingo. Because if I knew I was getting if I knew I was getting a 1, it'd be like, yeah. If I know I'm getting a 6, I'm like, no. And I can't undo that 6 either. That's the problem. But for sanity, I have to do certain things, although this kind of notation might help me in the long run, and I think I'll follow that later. Okay, so, and I probably should have just done that. But now that additional force allows me to now use U.S. replacements, the goal being I'm getting such good numbers on these that it's fantastic. Unfortunately, I don't have as good a pursuit now. I'm at only a +1 on the die roll. So, but I've got so much firepower, and now they're in Cambodia, so I've got free fire on them, which I did not back in Ken Tong. I also, though, lost my big artillery firepower. Round of pursuit, I don't know if it was worth it. I only sent ARVN in because I didn't want to do the invasion, given that I've already rolled the die and everything. And yeah. And I ended up losing an ARVN unit. I have not killed any of the NVA units except the headquarters. The rest managed to get away, although they took huge losses on replacements. I mean, they might have been better off losing the division in terms of the total cost. But, you know, that total cost also did some damage. They drained ARVN down to nothing. The U.S. replacements, you can see, is pretty low. So I've done a lot to neuter the U.S. operations, and I'm done for a while. You know, I mean, I want to get through my turns and play other things because I'm kind of trying to promise myself, oh, I can play another game in between, you know, videos or whatever. But I just don't have the willpower, I don't think. I also don't have quite the willpower to set it aside and say, nope, I'm not going to do this. It's very, very hard for me to give up on a game. I mean, it's not that I'm not enjoying it. It's that I'm not enjoying it. No, I mean, I don't know how to put it. You know, it's very, very fatiguing and painful to take this action. This was fun. Especially being able to do it kind of as a hip shot type thing, you know. The problem is you can't play this game as a hip shot. You really have to analyze your numbers. I got lucky there. Or I'm beginning to get enough of a feel for the game that I'm making decent guesses as to the casualties, you know, as to what the numbers are likely to come out as. But I could have certainly optimized the numbers of force that I sent in. This is not, because of the way the odds chart works, where it is actually an odds chart. It's not, you know, I don't know how else to put it. It's not a firepower based game like certain others are, like say Empires and Arms or something, where calculating specific odds doesn't necessarily help you. Having a good idea is good. And counting up the specific amount of unit strength and firepower, and then doing the requisite calculations within that, caused by that counting up again and again for each operation, within a big operation. If I'm doing a big operation, I got to do it again and again and again. And that hurts. And that's all I have to say about that. And I think that's part of what I don't like about it. The repetitive's one thing, but the repetitive pain. Speaking of which, my foot. All right, I'm done for tonight. Got a little somebody in my yard. Actually, a rather large woodpecker. He's been kind of ignoring me, so I figured I had a chance to catch him on video. After our little woodpecker interlude, I'm back on another massive operation. This one intended to be massive. I've thrown, unfortunately, I don't have Arvin replacements left, but I've thrown Arvin into it to help block locations, give me some extra strength. I'm also going to throw every goddamn air point I got into it. Yes, I could do some plinking with air points down here. Anywhere else that's particularly pleasing? I don't see another location where I really want to throw air power into play. Probably going to try an operation here and throw the Navy into that. This is troublesome, but I'm going to try to win this by just overwhelming fire support. The thing is, the VC can just leave. They could alert out, but more importantly, because the battle is happening in a capital, there will be no pursuit modifier. And they can get out. There's not going to be much that stops them from getting out of there. So 2 to leave here, and 3, 4. Actually, they can't get out. So I could pin them into play. And in fact, I can keep it so that they can't even leave the location if I throw interdiction support into there and just force them to fight. I don't know if I want to do that. The most important thing to me is getting the capital back, but I kind of like the idea of causing casualties. The thing is, these are VC. I don't really want to trade US casualties for it. So if they choose to stick around, I'm going to hit them with that firepower. And we're almost done with the US side of the turn, this means. Thank God. This is killing me for the reasons I expressed before. It's just really hard to want to come up and face this. Which is weird, because I do have a certain excitement and enjoyment to the game. It's just, I also have this dread that keeps me from playing, and when I do come up and play, some of the times I can't deal. I come up, I look at the board, I figure, I look at everything, and I can't find anything that I want to do. Since it's not the US morale that's the real constraint in this game. It's the US players' morale. I don't think you need all the track for the US. Eventually the US just says, I can't handle it anymore. Found a different way to represent my strength. We'll see if this works better. I'm dividing it up just ground force, firepower into these. That means I have to do some quick addition though. So we've got 40 strength points here. I got 34 times, what is it? I'm allowed 3 times, I think. Looks like I can fit it all in. So 34, 43, 133 to 40. I'm looking at like 3 to 1. Let me make sure it's indeed 3 times and not twice. Okay, well, we got a damn good roll. Unfortunately, that doesn't give us any additional pursuit modifier because of the capital. But the losses were big enough that the VC's like, screw this. They took 13 losses. Turns out they had 2 divisions in those 2 hexes, but only remnants of 2 divisions. So there's a couple of headquarters and everything. This could end up pretty big with all that air power thrown in. So we'll see what we got. The second round of combat is going to be not quite as impressive, but I did throw the Koreans in just so that I can get decent strength point allocation. So now that puts me at 127 to 40, which is still the 3 to 1, which is part of the problem. So I just have so much strength coming in there that the VC are like, yeah, we're facing... Now, they're in great terrain, so that cancels that out, but yeah. Continues, this time again with good losses. The US doesn't have much staying power, though, and that's dangerous. With me this low, we could start seeing attempts to kill US units, so I don't know if I can really afford to continue pursuing. I went in with this next round because I got a decent pursuit modifier showing up at like +7 from that. However, instead of a VC battalion, it's another element of one of the 2 divisions there. I think this is going to end up with the US having to pull out. But here's the thing. The VC, they're falling down hard and fast enough that they might not be able to launch attacks against the US. I don't think it's going to happen because I think what's the trade-offs that have been coming, unless I can get down on like the 11 chart or something. And even down there, I'm still causing 2 US losses per. The trade-offs that are happening, the US cannot sustain the losses that they're getting. This was a great attack. I just don't have the reserves for it, and I'm putting myself in danger of taking some morale hits due to the loss of US units. After some naval bombardment down in Bazuyan against these guys, the only target left, I can't afford to do any more ground operations. Well, I cleared the big problem out of Tuyan-Duk. Now it's in Khantum. You know, a lot of damage done. I think the NLF is going to try to kill some US units, though. I've got replacements. They don't. You know? And those morale hits are going to be valuable. On top of that, I didn't do any damage. And we got another season, or another turn this season, where nobody can do any ground operations because I've just gotten too violent. The price starts to get paid for running down on replacements. So, hey, I got a heavy artillery. Boom! I shoot at some Arvin. Arvin has no replacements. They lose a headquarters for it. I wasn't sure whether or not to take infantry or headquarters. It's a hard call. They're equivalent prices. But yeah, I mean, you know, Arvin units are just there for the killing at this point. US aren't far from that. How do you... One of the concepts I have here, and this applies to both sides, really, maybe less to the VC than anything else, but a game that allows you to get into this kind of situation that historically never would have been reasonable to happen. Is it reasonable? Is it not? You know, it comes to a question. I was warned. I knew about the potential. I've seen the potential before. That's how I lost the last time I tried to play this campaign was U.S. replacements running out and this, you know, VC, the NLF being able to destroy them in their first offensive. But it's really, really hard. You know, you have these resources. You're used to a game where you're using up your resources. Obviously, replacements are not the same level as your air points or your air mobile. But man, the cost that's being inflicted, or that's going to be inflicted, I think is tremendous here. And I think it's well worth losing whatever I have left. But I do have to 2 turns this season of operations to still take. But yeah, it looks like horrible stuff is just going to start happening. And basically, through a failure in maintaining the logistical supply chain at the level that could absorb whatever could be thrown at it, it's a constant Damocles sword hanging over your head. Kind of I seldom reach 30 replacement points, but you're probably able to start causing real damage to a U.S. force, from what I've been told, that goes below 30. Well, I drained it way down. This may have tempted me to become too aggressive with the VC especially. You can see I'm building up the casualty count there because I'm jumping into capitals at basically a 0 modifier, maybe a -1 or something like that. And it's just not working out. I'm taking too many losses. So I got to be a little bit more cautious with them. When I start seeing, opportunity, I go crazy. And it's kind of like what the offensives are like, but I'm not getting the points for making the offensive attacks. And I'm wearing out my VC to no good extent. On the other hand, in some cases, it's working out just fine. Like down here in Chongtian, I threw a free fire to try to defend the damn capital, not with any intention to actually defend it, and we got a U.S. unit dead there. I had accidentally killed the Korean unit, and I had a replacement point left that could have saved it. So if you caught me there, that got undone, but we blasted into there and did some more damage. Let's see if I got any more. Looks like I got a potential attack here. May be able to take Hue even. There's a lot of troops near there. For the most part, I don't, like 2 units can maybe take out an armored battalion. That's kind of the thing that I've been trying and not getting away with very well. But some of these other attacks, I don't even want to try them. But, something like this is so appealing because I'm looking at, oh man, there's a 14-point unit there. But the odds I'm going to get on it more or less ensure that I'm probably going to end up down here and do absolutely nothing to it because it's only 14. So, yeah. They actually surrounded, try to kill the, I don't remember which. These are capital. This is, jeez. Those Thai units, I don't remember which. Oh, they've got it here, right? Those are the Koreans. So the ROK, that is actually an Australian unit. Really? I thought it was Republic of Korea. Oh, it's like RQ. Queen's Royal or something, I don't know. Anyway, yeah, so it was actually the Australians, which explains why they're decent. The Koreans actually are over here and they fled. They managed to get out by being air mobilized. Lost one of the ARVN armored units, lost Hue, and now Thu Thien, which has been kind of a stronghold, this very northern area here, has been a kind of a stronghold for pro-U.S. sentiment. We're going to turn that around. And that was actually a major VC goal. I think I'm done with most of my attacks. I'm not totally thrilled with the choices that I made, but, I'm actually enjoying it more the less calculation I do. And these big attacks, I don't know. I thought they required a lot of calculation, but to some extent you can just send overwhelming force in or whatever and take your hits where they want. But yeah, this does not look good for the U.S. The hits that they're taking and also the territory that they're losing due to this. I wish I had an offensive going because, of course, this wouldn't have happened with an offensive going because there aren't, the only reason this happened was the U.S. pursued the shit out of some of those NVA units. And they got some destruction, but not as much as I would have liked. Mainly, they just squished them away. There were too many NVA replacement points to make up for, and not enough US-based ones, and it means my trade-offs weren't good. Not as good as maybe I thought I was. Just getting 8 to 11, or to 13, still not even 2 to 1, and now I'm paying a huge price. And seeing the game change in this fashion, even though I know it's from my own mistakes or whatever, it's making me a little more happy. Among other things, I think the end's in sight. With it there, it wasn't. I think it's obviously possible that the U.S. can sustain and keep the war going for a long time. The only problem really is the morale points. So I'm not that much, I'm not that much slower than I think the historical buildup was. Yet, now I feel like the war will be over in a couple of years if Saigon doesn't just happen to fall this turn. I mean, it could happen this season, not this turn. But the U.S. should be able to defend Saigon. But the question is then, how much more are they giving up? What's all going on? And, you make a mistake like I made here, and I've been making it all game long, according to Jason. You're in a position where, you just lose, I mean, you can't come back from, I think, we'll see when the population shifts, but you can't come back from the kind of losses I'm taking. And I'm demoralized as the U.S., which of course makes me happier. It's not the demoralization of, oh my God, this war is just such a slog. It's just going to continue forever. It feels like Afghanistan or whatever it does now. Rather, it's, oh good, I'm losing. So I think that's going to be the end of the first part of fall. And we'll reset losses. So other than the losses up there, we took some losses here too. We took 4 air mobile losses. No plane losses though. The one operation, we did very few operations with air power. One of them was really heavy. It didn't take any losses on there. Remember, only 1 loss per operation too. So if you can concentrate your forces on an operation, you're not going to take as many resource losses. I don't have a whole hell of a lot to move, especially in the center part of the country where the U.S. was doing a great job. But you can see heavier focus up on the Thuetian Quang Tree, I think it is, up in the north. Try to get that, so that if I can convert everything to about here to VC controlled areas mostly. That's one of my goals, and I'm also infiltrating further down along the coastline and everything. There's not a lot of U.S. presence down there, and the U.S. presence isn't necessarily too helpful anymore, at least for this turn. We got some big worries in terms of what's going on. Now, obviously the losses for the VC are still pretty heavy. I mean, remember, this thing was over 100 at the beginning of this turn, or made it over 100 at one point in this turn, due to a couple of withdrawals. So we've taken a lot of losses to do what we did without an offensive going on. But I think it was worth doing given the opportunity came up, rather than trying to wait for the offensive to get the added bonus of all the attacks. But yeah, the cost is heavy. Not only did I lose all the replacements, but body bag count is going to be up there too. Especially if I keep going. I've still got a little bit of gas left in the NLF tanks for additional attacks that are exceptionally good. Like 2 complete VC divisions sitting here, stuff sitting here, stuff sitting here preparing for another attack. The U.S. has the opportunity to get out of there. I probably want to get this ANZAC unit out. So I think I'll do a couple more things. Quang Ngai, not worth fighting over if the VC are going to be that heavily involved there. So I think I'll just withdraw. I'm really losing my my stomach for the fight, though. Say the seasonal pattern of the game doesn't seem to match at least what I would think U.S. capabilities are in terms of reinforcing or withdrawing from areas. Especially given that there's 2 turns per season, what it means is the U.S. is basically committed to losing more units, maybe not too many, based on the positioning. Now, I can do something to defend that. I could do some strategic movement to get out of risky areas, and I'm going to have to do that. So things like this, this is going to probably be abandoned. That's too dangerous. I can't hold that. You know, that's clearly not a safe place. And that's the nice thing I have. I do have the strategic movement opportunity to clear out. So that'll help quite a bit. But the idea that no replacement forces are available, no additional manpower is available from anywhere. I can't bring in, you know, I can't start dissolving units and breaking them up and using them as replacements or anything like that. That really feels like there's too much time where I'm, you know, in this hellish position where there's just no possibility to keep throwing more men into the meat grinder. Instead, I'm gonna, you know, if I stick around and fight, you know, the commanding officer is just like, yeah, well, do what you can. I got nothing for you. That doesn't seem to apply. This does not seem reasonable for me. And I'm not sure if it seems reasonable for the NVA or the VC either, but it's especially harmful for the U.S. Or ARVN for that matter. But I mean, I do not think that you're not supposed to misplay this way, but it's easy to do. So this is where we are for the second half of the turn, and we have is the U.S. did a couple of strategic moves and also put something like actually adding forces into here rather than withdrawing from it. Is that a good idea? Probably not. I think the VC are going to attack anyway. But we also threw all our artillery on hold. We're going to have a whole bunch of firepower there if they choose to go in. We're going to make them pay like hell, but you know, basically the thing was, I fought so hard to regain some power over here, and I don't want to lose it. But it probably means I made some bad decision. I should get some of these guys into there too. Hold on. Anyway, you can see what I'm kind of trying to do. At some point or another, then we get to the regular pulsing, and the question is, you know, how much of our firepower do we use trying to blow up the communist forces, and how much do we want to withhold for possible attacks? So for example, I'd like to withhold some additional firepower here for Fubon, definitely. So maybe an extra 10 or so points, even though I've got tremendous firepower already going in. But other places, I'm not so worried about the U.S. being in trouble. So, you know, like Da Nang. Da Nang is actually safe. I don't think anything can get there and attack. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This unit could. These cannot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. So I've got certain, you know, assurances of areas that I still have under control and safe keeping. The U.S. firepower convinced me that there's just no way to keep big stacks around as the VC, especially in, you know, not really rough terrain. And I launched some other attacks which pretty much drained things between that and the firepower effect, where I ended up leaving the U.S. alone here in Fubon. It just wasn't worth the attack. Notably, there was an attack down here in Kontum, which scared the U.S. away. And, but some NVA units were sitting around and just got themselves blown to smithereens. I got some more up here that have already moved that are going to get shot at as well. And we've reached the end of the line down here. I did a little bit of repositioning. For the most part, this has been a really short turn just because everybody's crapped out in terms of resources. Now, ideally, one side or the other would have been able to say, I can afford the resource loss greater than the other, but the cost of attacking is greater. It's kind of a situation that is sort of missing in some World War I games I have that should represent that. I'm thinking like Grand Guerre here and Balance of Powers, both of which you're capable of causing approximately equal losses on the attack. Here, I'm pretty sure the US doesn't want to take losses on either of theirs in exchange even for NVA losses, and NVA losses are hard to come by. But basically, yeah, I mean, small units or something. Small units, no. You have to have enough force to hit to actually give force on the enemy. So, I mean, it would have been not unreasonable to launch this attack for the VC. I still think that probably would have been a valid attack. But the VC have something else to inhibit their attack, which is not just force preservation, but the fact that they can modify the populations if they keep their forces on the board. So wiping out a couple of VC divisions didn't seem like a good plan. Instead, it made more sense to spread them out. Yes, I know they're not battalions, which clearly that would be a better deal with, but to spread them out and maintain them and look for the next opportunity. There's probably going to be another one. Look at the casualty pile here. I mean, the U.S. didn't suffer that much. I didn't make them pay as hard as I thought I was going to. But ARVN, wow, they took a heavy hit. And obviously, the NVA and VC took a pretty heavy hit here too. So the net effect, paradoxically, of this turn is going to be an increase in U.S. morale, but because of the Deadpool total. But boy, did we make ARVN pay for that mistake. And I don't know if this is recoverable. I don't know if it's not. We're going to have to take a look at a lot of factors. Like, I'm pretty sure the ARVN units are rebuildable. But yeah, I mean, the cost of maintaining the war at this level is just really much more painful than it has been previously. We had a population shift of 9 points, which drops down to 201 here, 149 there. The shift's more or less where you'd expect them. Heavy concentrations of VC forces in certain areas where they've been cleared out, like, Tay Ninh or whatever. Yeah, it's finally beginning to recover, but there's other things like Vinh Binh. No population, no activity down there. It's still crappy. Actually decreased, I think, because there's a certain amount of randomness in the whole thing. But yeah, I can't suffer these kind of population decreases, and grabbing, if the NLF is able to grab capitals and stuff on a regular basis and force me to do free fires and all that shit, as well as maintaining a presence on the board, it's just, I'm not going to be able to withstand that kind of onslaught. So I haven't deployed my VC and VA, not much NVA coming on the board anymore. I think my goal is actually to pull the NVA off the board where I can, certainly down there where they're subject to coastal bombardments. This is a recovery turn as far as I'm concerned. Building a bunch, first thing first, there was a coup, which hurts the U.S. situation, definitely. But for the most part, I kind of want to get the NVA out of the capacity of being shot. There aren't a lot left on the board. I got one here. I'm okay with it to some extent. If they want to try to blow up that, whatever. I got a headquarters I forgot to move last time. I better remember this time. And deployed a second headquarters that got destroyed to bring it down into place. For the U.S., Arvn's rebuilding their likely to be effective divisions. They took a lot of hits on effective units, and now they're bringing them in. And the replacements for those. But yeah, I could have launched an offensive this turn, but the problem is I want to get enough replacements to make it worthwhile. So I threw a lot of points into replacements, 48 replacements there. For the U.S., you can see the replacements not doing so well. The problem there is having to rebuild those Arvn units took away from my capacity to funnel more troops into the pipeline, which, you know, if I'm following Jason's advice, I look at this and say, oh, only 30 replacements. Yeah, I can wear that down. Yeah, but I can't really. The VC replacements, I had to build some. I've never built any before, I think, ever when I played. But I've never seen them drained to the extent that they were at this point. I am going to throw a couple of regiments on the board, probably on the trail, just because I'm having trouble finding locations I necessarily want to. I perhaps want to build them in. I could build them in some of the places like Bindin if I can find something within 8 hexes or whatever. There are provinces I could slip one in, but I don't see much point to that. Those big units, I'd rather keep them in the rough terrain for now until the offensive unleashes. I think this is going to start becoming very, very clearly bad for the U.S. right now. Yeah, morale took a hit, 452. I'm continuing to ramp up at 15, not going up to that 25. I probably should be, but I just can't do it. No other assets coming into play. But, you know, the biggie, the morale dropping down for the SVN down to 72. They're at about half their replacement. Their population is used up already in terms of military draft. So, you know, if we're going to start seeing this kind of violence, Arvn's going to get worn out. Yeah. All right. So set up my mainly VC forces. Also, during infiltration, moved things down. Probably want this sucker to be up a little higher. Put him up there because he can. And I'm worried I might have gotten some things wrong because I found not this one, but this one over here I didn't have marked. I don't know if it would have made a difference. I mean, it would have made a difference on Khantum, but Khantum is screwed anyway. And I also went and seized one during setup, which can happen at the beginning of the game too. Things can get left open for good reason. That divisional headquarters that I had kicking around, that was actually supposed to be a reinforcement, I think, or else I screwed up and rebuilt something that, whatever. Anyway, I kind of wish I didn't have it because it means I have to build the rest of the division because it looks like the rest of its unit got wiped out. Like the headquarters got hit first. That turn before I put it in place, it didn't make it down anywhere useful. And then the rest of the unit got wiped out, and maybe I'll come in the next turn. Otherwise, contesting 4th Corps, which is good because, again, Arvn got a kind of crappy roll. And you can see there's not much available in 4th Corps. 2 divisions are awake. The coup and the instability around it, etc. And actually, the loyalty check, the earlier checks on loyalty changes, removing officers, is what disabled a couple of these leaders. But So I actually have less leaders available than I would under a normal turn because of those failures. And so it kind of worked out nicely. And knowing there was a coup, knowing there were certain leaders out of play, it made it easier to infiltrate down, or to squeeze pieces down there. I had supply that's available for a while. I have a fair amount of time left on this video. I gotta kind of decide whether I want to play Space Corps and load this up, or try to squeeze another turn in, and then maybe end up ending Vietnam entirely after that turn or whatever. But I don't know. It's just hard to decide. So let's see what happens. I don't know where the video is going. But after another unpleasantly long delay, I'm actually up here trying to play again. It's been about a week. I hurt my foot really bad, my ankle, again, shopping last week, and I had trouble getting up here, so, that was an additional disincentive. It's a shame because about 2 weeks ago I was ready to do Space Corps, and now, it's less. It was kind of the driving force. First Nevsky, then Space Corps. This kind of let's insert games, but it's so easy to avoid. Anyway, for the first time, I'm starting to put, or I think for the first time, starting to put some of the NLF forces into a hold position, with the idea being, I kind of want to sit on these capitals, and let's make it painful for the U.S. to dig me out of them. Even if just for the first round. There's not a lot that I need to do this turn. I'm not doing an offensive or anything. I don't have a lot of big forces consolidated on the board the way I did the last couple turns. I've taken a lot of damage, and we'll just make the cleanup a little more painful on the U.S. Some of these other places, maybe I don't want to stay in so badly. Now I got to look for security opportunities. I've had a great overestimation of the impact of security operations, which you may have seen earlier. This one, I'm a little more familiar with what they're, with how they work. So I remember wiping things out with security operations way back when, maybe the last time I played, maybe 2 times ago. And am just terrified of being along the road, But it takes a fair amount of force to do something, and if you don't have a tremendous, overwhelming force compared to the enemy, it comes with a cost, and we've seen that cost. So some significant losses here, but I hit some big VC units. I think my feeling came from trying to interdict roads with individual battalions of VC, and that just doesn't work. But now at this stage in the game, there's some bigger units out there that mean that security operations have to be somewhat larger. So we did clear some stuff, and one of the problems with security operations is because they use strategic movement, they end up dividing up your forces. Now, in this case, I'm using armored units for it, but and artillery. But yeah, my command is not, consolidated. I have like a unit of the 101st along with a 3rd Marine Armor working together on this one, and that kind of disturbs me a little bit. I'm not sure I hit the best places. I came down, hit here. This doesn't look terribly defended, I've got ones down here, including, I ran out of hold markers, one over here. But you don't know, If you're hitting a regiment, you need a significantly different amount of force. And with how long I've been away, I'm not absolutely sure what's where. Not that, you necessarily would be anyway, but my uncertainty is probably much higher than it should be. Even though I just looked at the units to decide, hey, are they going to hold here or not? And I actually know some things like this is just a political section, but I don't really let that come into my U.S. planning. Okay, pushing our way through the winter here. Trying to make it when I can convince myself. Much of the north, I've already handled operations in there. And what the U.S. is finding is, yeah, we can maybe win the attrition war by just a razor's edge at best, you know. And that's what we kind of have to settle for. It's no longer a matter of we can just stomp out the insurgency the way we were able to before at essentially no cost. Since that offensive, the buildup of units, etc., it's gotten back to being an ugly situation that I can't really get control over as the U.S. player. And I mean, obviously, if the game was just the U.S. could womp all over the place, that wouldn't work. You know, it wouldn't represent history, and it also wouldn't be a hell of a lot of fun. But yeah, we're starting to, use a lot more free fire just to make sure that we keep the attrition rates low. The problem with that, of course, is there's a cost in popularity. You start free firing regions, and the VC can get out of them, and they'll still degenerate slightly, and they can go concentrate somewhere else, and then you have to make the choice somewhere else. And everything you do, it's kind of like Freedom in the Galaxy in that way, you know. Everywhere you jump to deal with a problem, yes, you can probably concentrate enough force and deal with that problem, but you may not be able to deal with the repercussions from it. Analogy for Freedom in the Galaxy is a little flawed, because in Freedom in the Galaxy, the counterinsurgency is capable of pretty much, they're more in the insurgency ratio here. The rebels can go wherever they like, start doing stuff, but then they're shut down, you know, so it's not the same. But there's something that's similar to it to me, which is the U.S. feels more in the rebels' position, honestly. And as usual, I mean, my ability to play is just so limited. But just in terms of willingness to spend the time. But we just finished up the first winter turn. I had hopes of, before Christmas break, this being done. It's Martin Luther King Day weekend now. It was a shopping weekend, and I actually went dancing rather than being a cripple. But very aggressive U.S. posture, lots of free fire zones, lots of attacks. Got a really good body bag count so far, 20, 21, 24, 33, which is pretty damn good. A lot of it came from the replacement rate being so low. I just, places, there were times when the VC replacements were causing me to take casualties when I wouldn't normally have to. And, I have not gotten Fourth Corps back under control. It's a mess, largely because of command on the ARVN side. If ARVN was in better command, I would be able to see things happening now. Yeah, that hasn't changed. I don't know if any of the minor leaders, any of the divisional commanders have changed. Over here, you can see the VC running out of the free fire zones, getting themselves set up so that if the U.S. wants to pursue a deal with those VC units this next turn, they're going to have to free fire them. We took a total loss of 4 air power, and I think that's it for the turn. No air mobile was destroyed. In fact, I had a lot of excess resources left in terms of air mobile and boats. Again, that kind of comes down to what happens when ARVN's not very effective. When ARVN's not doing its job properly, we have too many resources. If they are doing their job properly, we have too few. And given that I have to feed the replacements now because VC is being more active and I'm hitting bigger units and having to fight harder and take actual casualties, we're kind of facing an ugly situation where we can't just keep bulking up and wiping them out. We're doing a lot of damage to them, but we're taking some losses. You can see my ARVN replacements have been cut down quite significantly. The US one's a little less. The NVA hardly touched. Mainly, again, because the VC were spread, the NVA kind of withdrew off the board to a large extent, and the VC are on the board, and their replacements were low, so they seemed like a good thing to target. All right, I guess I'll set it up for the second winter turn, and I really don't know how much longer I can go. My state of paralysis. You know, there's just so much that you can balance, that you can calculate, that you can figure out in this game, which I know is part of the appeal. But what it does to me is weighs in perhaps the most severe case of analysis paralysis I can have. And I end up with the, I'm just going to fuck it and do something. And that's when I actually end up playing. Now, you can say, okay, look, just do that, man. What's wrong with you? Yeah, except the price is high. When you fuck up in this game, you can fuck up really big. You know, I did a couple operations and now I'm studying the map all over and I'm just like, oh, nothing looks good, you know. I know that there's 2 regiments here. So I thought about the 101st and I moved my pieces and started doing the calculations. I know exactly what's there. I know what I need. And I kind of had okay, screw it. I'll just throw the resources in. Well, it was going to cost me basically all of my air points to make the attack. And I'm like, you know, that gets me to 4-1 because of the terrain. That's just a +1. It could go very badly. I could end up draining my replacements fighting this and not really getting anywhere. Whereas I can probably still wipe out a fair number of little units, maybe about the same cost as that, with other resources. And then I start looking at those places. I'm like, it doesn't look easy. It's not possible. I need to throw helicopters in to do it. Do I really want to do that? So, you know, I'm looking at something like this, where, yeah, I can get somewhere, but I can't get here. 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He's only got a 7 movement because of his formation. I could get here 3, 6, 7. But I do that, and I'm causing a scatter on all this. And it's just, I walk away and I don't want to play. I don't want to make these decisions again, you know? And then, yeah, I got a cold for a couple of days. Whatever serves is a great excuse not to come up here and play this, you know? And you could say I hate the game, but I don't. I respect it too much. And at its best moments, I do enjoy it about as much as I do any kind of modern operational design, which isn't to say very much. It's part of the problem is it's still modern, you know. I don't know. I may not make it through the turn. I just don't fucking know. I think we're about ready to put 1968 to bed, which is good because it means I can play something else. I don't know whether or not I'm going to be continuing. Largely, I think it's going to depend on whether or not there's an offensive next turn, but we'll see after I play something else whether or not I want to. No, I'm not completely wrapped here. Let's see what we had. We had shifting upward out of Bazuyan because Arvin 5th Division got moved down into the south there. Again, units moving down here, that's going to be a threat to these coastal guys, but I didn't have a really good place to run with them. So I'm going to let the U.S. hunt those down, or Arvin for the most part, hunt those suckers down. Elsewhere, you know, we launched attacks here, ran away, you know. So much of it is of that nature. I did some bombardment over there on the NVA unit. I had, you know, enough for 3 or 4 big bombardment attacks, even without free fire, just dropping 8 firepower into it at a time. Which again, it's because there aren't enough Arvin units available to do all the operations I want. Yeah, I could throw more firepower into certain operations, and sometimes that might make sense. Other times, though, I'm just kind of reserving my firepower, and then I get to the end of the turn, and I'm like, okay, well, I'll throw a lot of it in here. And we had cases where I was throwing 7, 11 points, whatever, into something. rather than the little pittances that I like to usually throw in that I haven't felt the need for. Let's see. Concentration on trying to clear this area out. You can see I've shifted. So a lot of these units that have moved aren't actually actively chasing, doing search and destroy missions or anything like that. What they've been doing is repositioning themselves to try to handle this little problem here. I think if I can get control of the center again, that's a good thing. If Arvin gets its head out of its ass, I can probably start doing some cleanup in Fourth Corps. Otherwise, that's going to be a real pain because I don't want to waste U.S. divisions down there when I really kind of need them and their high pursuit bonuses in the uglier terrain and their better combat capabilities, to be honest. We're seeing some messes though, so like NLF units, the VC in particular here, moving into areas that they had kind of gotten away from, balancing out their force pool so that their force spreading out enough so that they can get some effects on the political on the hearts and minds side of things. I've got some units that didn't do shit, like these guys. Well, maybe they do want to do shit then. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Wow. I don't have much in resources left. If I hadn't blown my air, I could have dealt with that. But then again, if I had my air available, the VC might not have moved in this close. Let me think about that. I may have an attack there. This is one of the things that going over it with y'all, helps me out with, because I do this in my head anyway at the end of the game, but I'm doing it, here on video instead, is that I do catch some of these, hey, the US probably would do something here. Now, in a real game, that might not happen because the US might just be like, pass, 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 and not realize, that these guys moved up here and that I should do something about it. I did drop my last couple bombs a little too late. I was like, the northern sector where I have almost no South Vietnamese supporting population, other than in Thu Thien, which is turning into a mess now. That was kind of all that was left, and I was saying, man, I could easily see the VC passing. I better drop my bombs now. And then as soon as I did that, these guys moved into play. So that's not unreasonable, but I still might have capability to launch an attack there. I don't see a whole lot of artillery kicking around, just that blue stuff, whatever the hell it is. I don't remember. I think they're Koreans, but I can't remember. I triggered a little bit more fun. An attack here didn't do much. These guys ran away, but they ran onto the road. It was the only safe place to go. Already ops complete. I managed to dig up a security force. I gotta pull one of those guys out of there. He's not returning to where he wants to be. But went up, yes, I can cross the whole map as long as I control the roads, and I got roads all the way up there. So I smacked into them. I think it was 1 U.S. replacement for 2 VC replacements. It's not really a trade either side, particularly once. There was a regimental VC unit there, which I didn't know for sure. But he was, he was in a cultivated hex. So I was like, well, can't have him stay there. I don't know why. Yeah, that's actually the problem. But he moved to another cultivated hex, not on the road this time, after getting slammed. I could have stuck around and tried to, force the U.S. to take more replacement losses or whatever, but I'm fine with where I went. So, that gets us to the end, I think, unless I find something else. And I'm going to start into the, post-turn stuff, going into spring of 69. Now, I'm actually going to finish that up before I go further, because one of the things I want to know before I start the next turn is whether or not there's going to be an offensive. So um, we'll at least have that information in play. But yeah, I've been trying to preserve the NLF forces, and I think I'm doing a pretty good job of it, honestly, at this point. While, because of the coup and other things, while decreasing the and all these damn free fires, because there's so much force on the board now again. The U.S. has not been able to get the handle that it was able to when Arvin could be trusted to handle Fourth Court. It no longer seems to be able to handle it. Some of its leaders, some of it's just bad luck, honestly. I guess it's all bad luck, but I just mean the per turn rolls aren't going too well for me. If I can get an offensive, I'm kind of curious to see how that second offensive a year later, after what we've seen happen, is going to go. Guess one of the big things here, though, is holy shit, I killed a lot of stuff. 25, 27, 31, 43. So, I'm getting casualty rates with the U.S. that are up there how they were before the offensive kind of confused things and made it so that the U.S. felt kind of paralyzed. Yeah, they're getting their legs back. Now it's time to throw them down to the mat again. And I get the feeling, one of the reasons I want to do that other turn, if I can do another offensive, I get the feeling that's going to kind of be the flow of the game for the rest of the game. And I'm just not sure I want to face that forever. But to get another picture of how the game is going to continue seems of some value to me. So anyway, but this took me 2-3 weeks to get this video as far as I've gotten it. I knew things were going bad. This big pile of captured capitals left over. Still a lot of that either directly from the offensive or because I felt my hands were tied with the U.S. and I was having trouble sort of reacting to the effects of it properly. Boy, did that hit hard. And then the free fires and a fair amount of units on the board as well. Some of them in more key locations than they're used to. 7 points of population swung in the VC favor. The heart of it, Thuothian, that was definitely a problem through here. Things went well for the U.S. in this area, and you can see there's no VC there at all. That's still kind of a heartland for them. And then cutting around the edges down here. Yeah, even Ken Ho. Bazuian is like this stronghold for them. And this area is sort of a stronghold. And up along the border even. But yeah, there's, just these fundamentally horror places. I mean, like, and Zuian or whatever starts out at low and it goes down. On the bright side, Gokong is finally like inching its way up. It's above 1, which I consider a huge advantage. It's not a very populous province, but it's just this weird thorn sitting right here. It's not that weird because Ken Ho and Vinh Binh are kind of bad too, but it was sort of the center of the problem, and now it's shifting down more over into those areas. But yeah, I mean, where am I strong? I guess I'm strong in Long Khan. Binh Thuan is decreasing. The VC are gaining control over there. So basically from Long Khan stripping over to here into the heart of Fourth Corps is really where things are going well. The coastal regions of Fourth Corps look like they're a mess. And despite my best efforts to deal with them, I had them under control. The VC had just abandoned Fourth Corps at one point, about a year and a half ago or so, but then they came back with the offensive and everything changed. And you can see there's units I didn't even bring on the board or else withdrew from battle. Big command, whatever, that I don't want to bring them in yet. I want to wait until I hit with that offensive. Those casualties are going to hurt, though. And it's going to be hard to recuperate from that, which may mean yeah, I can't really afford the offensive, but as long as I'm dropping this population, so this is down to 194, up here 144. That's above starting, having 10 population above where things started. So I feel like things are going pretty good for the NLF. We'll see where things wind up. That's all I can do tonight, but I'm fatigued. But I'm kind of proud of myself for finally just pushing through the end of the turn, because I've been delaying and plinking a couple of pieces and doing like 1 or 2 operations and saying I can't face it anymore. And it just kind of plowed through. The end is always like that for me, though. The end of a season is always like, eventually I get a grasp on the season and I just say, yeah, I can do the rest of it. But at the beginning, when I've got so many resources available on both sides in so many places, so many things that can be done, it is really hard. And even when I try to take strategic concepts into play, I look at them and I'm like, do I want to pursue what I can do, the opportunity that I have right now with units that are close to BC units and can actually do something? Or do I want to reposition my forces so that I can chase down some strategic objectives that I'm not really sure are all that advantageous? Now, some of them, like Fubon, southern Khartoum here, these are areas you can fight in. But, if you're looking at this nasty stuff up here, I can't clear that easily. It's better for me to work on killing the units that are down here. And then body count is a strategic objective. And I seem to have a pretty good time of getting it wiped out. We didn't even see a lot of just fleeing VC in this case. We saw some real battles, some real fights being dragged out in certain areas. All right. Okay, I think I'm all set for 1969 starting. Yeah, I got enough points barely that I could justify an offensive. A lot harder than I thought it was to pull these off. I thought I could roll off, one a turn or one a season, and then, well, maybe two a year. Nah, it took me everything just to get up to the position where I could do do one a year. But you can see all the VC battalions on the board. Most of their divisional regiments on the board. They left one of their headquarters off. Couldn't afford that. Not so much the cost of it as to place it where it was useful. Basically, it was a choice between I could either take the divisional headquarters or the regiment, or the fill-in regiment. Coming in everywhere, infiltrating where I can. I got a new North Vietnamese division in play here. I was able to fill that out. There's another regiment on the map up here. This was kind of embarrassing. I had left this open. I intended to go fill that in, but I can't remember what could have gotten there, if anything. So, hey, already took a capital. Concentration. The VC, because I didn't have a whole lot of excess supply, concentration is really in the north. Support this division. Also because the U.S. took this turn to build the 1st Division and bring it in, not really build it. It was a hard call. It's like I've been having trouble, again, like with getting the offensive together, I've been having trouble getting the U.S. points together where I could afford to throw another division on the map. I wanted the 23rd. That would have cost, I think, 1 point too many. I just barely could get this into play with the amount of replacements that I saw as a minimum. It meant no additional air, and so I'm going into the spring turn where I have too little resources anyway with an additional whole division. But let's talk a little bit about Arvin. What happened with Arvin? I keep forgetting I have such a good leader here now. He just is this wonderful leader. He's the ahistorical leader, but I eliminated my great leader of, what is it, the 7th Division or whatever, and he got replaced with someone who isn't that bad, but then I got an absolutely terrible roll, and basically the only thing that's active is the 2nd and 25th Divisions over in 2nd Corps, and the 2nd Corps base units. So I'm not going to have a lot to react to this with. So in a way, it's kind of good that I threw a division into play, except during an offensive, it's the most likely time, at least the way that I play, that we're going to actually drain those U.S. replacements. And I spent a lot of points on ARVN replacements that, to get them back into play, that are not probably going to be very, very helpful. I am not going to start playing this right away. This is going to go up. I expect I will get to this because I really kind of wanted to see what is that second offensive like. I don't know how much more steam I've got in me for this game. I haven't made it very far, and it's just taking me fucking forever. The game should be done by now, I just have not had the willpower to face it. So, but this is how I got sucked in before, was play a turn, go play something else, and come back with something exciting to do, and then see what happens. I may not make it through the full season even of the offensive. Point-wise, what's going on? Well, the U.S. is beginning to really steam up there. We're up to 264 on commitment, which is really starting to cost us stuff. The population is turning against us more and more. We're finding ourselves just in this ever-deteriorating situation. Now, we're not near the end. It's not like, oh my God, I don't see what I can possibly do or anything like that. It's just going to be this long, deteriorating slog. And on the other hand, I'm going to be getting my body bags up. My morale's actually not that bad. I only lost 2 points of morale. Again, only cranked up the 15 points again. I just refuse to go and pay, that extra point of commitment to get myself another 10 points because extra point of morale, because that raises my commitment, as it should, but it also starts lowering my morale at higher and higher rates. The best thing to do would be to just crank 5 points per turn. I've tried that. Every other time I've played, I've tried doing a lot of that. It does not work. The VC just take control of the country. I feel like I'm able to handle the VC, but for the most part. But then the offensives come and they give me a huge setback across the board. Well, the one offensive gave me a huge setback. I expect this one will too. I'm not quite as strong though with the NLF as I was, I don't think. I certainly don't have the huge quantity of replacements that are going to allow me to really abuse the VC. But there are a lot of target places. We might see the U.S. trying to cover spaces and just say, you know what, we're going to try to weather this one out. And then we'll come back out when the weather is better and, the VC have expended their effort. In terms of VC points, well, I haven't added this yet. I did this all in pencil this time, which is rather wise. Usually I pen over it and then end up finding out I fucked up anyway. So yeah, I've got to get those costs in there. But I've got a fair amount of distance to go still. So I'm looking at, let's see, 66, 74 more commitment, which puts me up to 415. That can't be right. I have already fucked up. 74, that was lies actually. I got the wrong number there anyway. No, I'm worried about the draft level. So 36 more draft. This is the interesting one. Which puts me up to 517. Now, with 156 population, 4 times that gets me up above 700. So far I can keep infiltrating in there without starting to pay higher and higher prices to get manpower on the board. Obviously, that's going to change eventually. In terms of commitment, I ate it all. It was actually 38 new commitment, not whatever I had down, so 17, 417. Yeah, it was close. And that can't be right either. 38, 379. Sorry, I'm adding to this because the chart for the VC is just not as good as the US one in terms of getting you all the information you want. It takes up a lot of less space though. But yeah, I had to put the 341. That's my current commitment there. So I just try to add it to here, but yeah, that doesn't work. And we're probably going to want a lot of trail supply next turn. We used up 74 out of 82. Means we have only 8 left. But yeah. All right. I feel kind of bad walking away knowing I'm going to probably... I know I'm not going to finish the game. That's the real problem. And that really adds to the negatives for it all. But I do have some hopes of seeing something interesting during this next offensive. All right, let's send this one up, and we'll come back after we play, I think, Space Corps.